Nice to know you're still there. If you were just joining us, this is Today's Business. Now, earlier on, I had a virtual conversation with Muda Yusuf, DG, Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and he gives his perspective on the issues bedeviling Nigeria's economy and the way forward, from proper deregulation of the Nigerian oil sector to creating competition in the same sector, and also opening the borders and tackling challenges in our nation's ports. He offers some recommendation. Listen to this.
The petrol pump price is a reflection of the policy regime that we are operating currently. We are operating a deregulated policy regime in the petroleum downstream sector. And what that policy presupposes is that as international prices or as the costs of the petroleum products increase or comes down in the international market, so will it be reflected in the domestic prices. So it oscillates or fluctuates with what the crude oil price is. That's the whole essence of the deregulation. So we are likely to be seeing that kind of volatility for as long as the international crude oil price is volatile. But the way to moderate this volatility first is to scale up the domestic refining of petroleum products. If we are refining locally, it will reduce this volatility and it will help to moderate the prices. So government has a responsibility to accelerate the process, either through the Dangote refinery or through whatever model they want to adopt in managing the existing refineries. Something has to happen very quickly to ensure that we scale up our domestic refining capacity. Secondly, we need to create a competitive framework for all the players in the petroleum downstream sector. Right now, what we have is that it's only NNPC that is importing petroleum products and selling petroleum products. That cannot work unless you have a competitive market framework where other players in the sector, other private sector players, other oil marketing companies can also import and sell. We will not have the benefit of the regulation. Because the benefit of the regulation lies in the competitiveness that comes with it. It is the competitiveness that will help to moderate prices. It is the competitiveness that will protect consumers against exploitation. So those two key factors are very critical to ensuring the success of the deregulation regime of petroleum products. If you don't put those in place, I'm afraid the whole policy may be derailed completely. And that will not be in the interest of the economy or even in the interest of the people or government itself. So that is the situation. Those are my comments on the
sir. Nigerians are asking, are we ever going to see the price of petrol come down like it was during the COVID-19 lockdown, during the COVID-19 pandemic in Nigeria? I want to get your response to that, sir.
It depends on what the international crude oil price is. What happened during the lockdown was that there was a complete crash of the crude oil price in the international market. And the pricing of petroleum products in a deregulated regime will always reflect the international price of crude. At that time, there was a crash in the price of crude. So at a point, it came less than $20 a barrel. That is what reflected in the crashing of domestic price of petroleum products. If we have that kind of scenario replayed again, of course, the price will come down. So it's a function of what happens with international crude oil price.
In connection with the price going up, just yesterday, the National Bureau of Statistics released the recent inflation figure at 14.23. I mean, which is way more than what we had in September 2020, which was at 13.71%. Did you see this increase in the rate coming?
Well, the increase in the rate did not come as a surprise, given all the parameters and what we know about the parameters that drive inflation. The key parameters that drive inflation are things like transportation costs, things like the exchange rate depreciation, things like the energy costs, the production costs, things like the insecurity in the agricultural community that is affecting agricultural production. These are the key things that are affecting inflation. Inflation in Nigeria is more of what we call cost push inflation. In other words, these are inflation that are driven by cost, either cost of transportation or cost of production. And for as long as those cost push factors are there, prices are likely to continue to go up. And if you look at the figure that we got from the NBS, the food component of inflation is much higher. The food component of inflation is 17%, which indicates that the greater pressure on prices is coming from the food sector. So we need to do a whole lot to support productivity in agriculture, to reduce the transportation cost of food products, to also review the issue of the land border to see what can come in from the neighboring countries to pushing the pressure on prices, and to also deal with the insecurity in many farming communities, because the insecurity is also creating a major problem of supply of food products in the country. So these are issues that we need to deal with if we really want to bring down the inflation rates in the country.
Thank you very much for that. During the time Nigeria was just coming out from the lockdown, the finance minister, Zainab Ahmed, said something like Nigeria can or could escape recession if the Q4 2020 and the subsequent quarters perform well. Seeing the inflation rate now, do you think we are going to escape recession at all?
No, we cannot escape recession. In fact, as I'm speaking to you, one can say that we're already in recession. You know, in Q2, we had a contraction in the economy of 6.1%, which is very big by the standards that we know within macroeconomics. Now, in Q3, the figures are not out, but given what happened with COVID and all the challenges of recovery and all of that, it is very likely that the results of the Q3 GDP numbers will also be negative. And the definition of recession technically is that when you have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, you have a recession. So we can declare now that we have a recession. Now the issue is how fast or how soon can we recover from that? Now we are already in Q4. We know what has happened in Q4 so far. You have the hangover of the COVID-19 issue. Now we had the NSAS. All of these 2 factors have further dampened the situation with the economy. So we are likely to further see a perpetuation of the recession up to Q4 this year. So before we begin to experience any recovery, we should be looking at maybe the second quarter of next year. We are likely to remain in recession between now and maybe the first quarter of next year, given all these challenges. Challenges of, as you know, there's already a resurgence of the COVID in Europe. That's already a threat of another shutdown in some of those countries. And these things have been affecting the global economy, which will affect oil price. And once oil price begin to collapse, it will affect our economy seriously, just as we are experiencing. So the recovery will take some time. We are looking at possibly second quarter of next year before we can be talking about recovery, given all the shocks that the economy has experienced in the last few months.
Speaking of recovery, what if you can just highlight probably 2 or 3 steps that both the government and the regulators can take to ensure that at least third quarter of 2021, Nigeria would have recovered from the recession?
We cannot recover in third quarter. Of 2021, okay. Second quarter of 2021, okay. I agree with you. Of course, that is feasible. First, we need to get our policy environment right, because you need investment for you to recover. Recovery is not going to come only from government investment or government expenditure. And in any case, government doesn't even have the money to spend. Government is struggling even to meet its own recurrent expenditure. So it is the policy environment that will make the difference in whether the economy will recover or not. And one major policy issue or subject that needs to be addressed is the foreign exchange policy. We continue with the kind of policy regime we are running with the foreign exchange. It is not good for investment. And that may slow down the pace or even the prospects of recovery. Because we need to ensure that we give confidence to investors. And your foreign exchange policy is very critical in bringing about that kind of confidence. Then the regulators should also do a lot more to support investors. Because if the regulatory environment is too hostile, if the regulatory environment is too uncertain, it will discourage investment. So that is also a very important thing. Then we need to deal with the issue of the ports. A lot of investors are complaining about the challenges they face at the ports, especially with the Nigeria Customs Service. The issue of valuation, the issue of classification, the issue of the logistics at the ports, the issue of the multiple checkpoints, the issue of too many desks of the customs.
What a conversation that was. We thank Muda Yusuf, the DG Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for that insightful expert view on the current inflation rate and what Nigeria can do to get out of it. I mean, I can't wait for that quarter two to come so we can get out of this recession, in quote. Well, that's so much we can take on to this edition of Today's Business. Until we meet again on the next edition, please stay safe. Remember, coronavirus is a deadly disease. Ensure to wash your hands frequently and keep social distancing, because it is one of the ways to avoid it. My name is Mercy Frank. Until tomorrow, stay safe.